Hi, my name is Alyssa Philly, and today for my micro-teaching project, I'm going to be doing my assignment on the most important skills and concepts to learn in the writing classroom, and I have chosen argumentative writing as my focus for this assignment. For today's learning goals, we are going to be focusing on applying critical thinking, making a claim, drafting, and revising. So for my learning activity, I decided that I think it would be fun for students to argue who they think is the more convincing vampire between Dracula and Edward Cullen. So we have Dracula, who is the classic vampire. He's been around for centuries, versus Edward Cullen. And if you turn on any kind of TV, there's probably a really good chance that there's at least one vampire TV show or movie on. And I think that being able to use film to integrate into academic writing helps students to gain an understanding and helps them to critically engage in what you're teaching them. Now, this kind of learning activity can be tweaked. It doesn't necessarily have to be about vampires, but I think when you can incorporate a modern medium that's applicable to your curriculum, it's a great way to engage your students. So for the rest of this learning activity, I think it'd be really cool to have your students read the excerpt from Dracula, which could be the first chapter or a couple paragraphs, really depending on what part you really want to ingrain in them. And for me, I just chose the first chapter because you get kind of that first taste of Dracula and what he's about and what kind of vampire characteristics he has. And then for Edward Cullen, I found a clip on YouTube that I will link below if you guys want to actually check it out, but I'll just give you the rundown. It's the scene, if you're familiar with Twilight, where Bella walks into the forest because she's realized that Edward is indeed a vampire, and he follows after her, and she starts making all these claims about how he's fast and everything, and doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, that kind of thing, and he basically confirms to her that he is indeed a vampire. So for this assignment, they're going to research and write a short argumentative essay on why Dracula or Edward Cullen is a more convincing vampire. This kind of argumentative essay is going to be more subjective, but I also think it's something more fun to kind of ease them into argumentative writing, especially my focus is more like upper middle school, lower high school. So I think this would be a fun way to integrate argumentative writing for those ages. So that's kind of what I was going for. So critical thinking is the first thing we're going to hit. And following with the learning activity, teachers could encourage students to use the text, to use dictionary definitions, to use articles on mythical creatures. They can also use the descriptions from the book or movie about the different vampire characteristics and traits to support their person and their claim. So according to Kavanaugh and Doe, from the Learning Through Writing, Teaching Critical Thinking Skills in Writing Assignments, critical thinking involves a set of strategies to help students develop reflective analysis and evaluations of interpretations or explanations. So being able to use a film medium with the book can encourage students to use those critical thinking strategies even more so, because they're kind of giving them a medium that they're more equipped to. I know reading is still really fun for some kids, but some kids are not a fan, and so being able to kind of connect with people who like reading versus watching movies and vice versa is a great way to really engage more of your students. The next thing you want to make sure your students are able to do is make a claim. So an argumentative essay begins with the writer taking a stance or making a claim that is supported credibly, sufficiently, and accurately with evidence, and then making a logical connection between the stance and the evidence. Basically, you want to make sure that your students are making a claim that they can viably support. So while this learning activity has a claim that is more subjective, they still have plenty of resources at their hands to really enhance what their claim is. Students who can construct and evaluate arguments demonstrate the ability to be thoughtful and reasonable. Now, you want to make sure when your students are making these claims that they're doing it in a way that's more scientific and to the fact, and you don't want a lot of I hate Dracula because I hate reading and the movies are all old, so I don't like those. I don't like Dracula, so I like Edward Cullen better. Or vice versa. You don't want claims and arguments that are simply, I hate Edward Cullen because vampires that sparkle are stupid and vampires shouldn't sparkle. So those are the kind of things you want your students' claims to be avoiding. And so you want to make sure that they're able to thoughtfully and reasonably make their claims and stand their ground. And I think another additional activity that can be really fun to add on to this learning activity, after the fact, when the essays are done, you can actually separate the class into who picked Edward and who picked Dracula, and you could even have like a little mini debate for both of them to get up and try and convince like a neutral party like yourself which really is the more convincing vampire. And they're going to have to use those argumentative claim skills to really get you to pick. So once the students get to their claim, they're going to be moving on to the importance of the drafting process. Now, drafting is an important part of the writing process because it helps students to organize their ideas. The key to successful application of this approach is to provide students with a specific direction for what to do when working. This could be achieved by giving students a list of exactly what you expect from their work. So tell them they have to do a rough draft, they have to do a chart, they have to do a pre-write, that kind of thing. Make sure they know what's expected of them in the drafting process. One of the things that I found that I really liked was from the article about cognitive strategies to support argument-based writing. And that was a mnemonic by Washburn, Seeloff, and Golden. And it's the use of the P mnemonic, like PEA, but they actually renamed it more recently the TEA, the T mnemonic, probably because of the wording in children. But T stands for topic, E stands for evidence, and A stands for analysis. So in the article, they laid out how students could use this format to easily draft for their argumentative essay. And I'm going to put a little chart up on the screen that I kind of mocked up for you guys that you could use for your students. And I think this would be a great way for them to be able to organize what vampire they're choosing, the evidence to support that vampire being the most convincing, and analysis of why this vampire is why the way they are. Scaffolding assignments like this will help to build a complex skill sets that students need to construct a more sophisticated argument with the use of external sources in the future. And so this will really allow your students to write their essay more easily. The better they have their draft done, the more easily it will be for them to flow right into the writing process. And so once they have all their drafting, all of their writing done, the next thing we're going into is revisions. So the importance of revisions. One way to start the revision process is by doing peer reviews. So it could be as simple as putting your students together who have picked the same vampire and making sure that they are checking each other's content. You want to make sure they're not simply just focusing on grammar and mechanics. While those things are important, for this part of the revision process, we really want to make sure that their content is where it needs to be. So by putting them with a partner who has the same subject matter, they can really check, kind of like fact check each other and make sure they're doing what they need to be doing. This also allows, because when you notice something wrong with someone else's work, it can help the student to improve in their own work. So self-assessment and feedback helps them to closely read and write their own changes that they need to make. So another way to tackle revisions is by having teacher conferences one-on-one with your student. And then you can give them personalized support. So if there's something they're stuck on, if they don't think their claim is convincing enough, making sure that their content is on par where it needs to be. These are the kind of things you could handle during teacher conferences. That's pretty much all you really need. I think if you really stick with these points while you're working with argumentative essays with your students, I think you'll be much more equipped to help them get where they need to be. So for my conclusion, I hope that I've helped you guys to have a better understanding of how to integrate popular media into the curriculum when applicable, as well as how to successfully task your students with critical thinking, and an understanding of how to successfully task students with making a claim. Also, that you have a better understanding of how to successfully task your students with the drafting and revision process. thank you guys so much for listening to my micro teaching project about argumentative essays today, and I really hope you enjoyed and took something away from it. I cannot wait to see your comments and feedback next week, but I hope you guys have a great day. Bye!